Welcome back to the Cherie Rickard Show, a podcast where faith and business intersect to inspire you and empower you as women. Each week, I'm sharing powerful messages of faith, offering practical business advice, and discussing strategies for achieving success. I'm featuring insightful conversations with industry leaders and faith-driven women, providing you with tools and inspiration to grow your business while staying true to your spiritual values. Now let's get ready, ladies. Let's rise, pray, and conquer, and let's dive in. My guest today is Lissa Figgins. She is a time management strategist and host of Redeem Her Time podcast. She is on a mission to shift the way go-getter Christian women business owners approach time so they can finally stop chasing the clock and their to-do list and increase their ROI on time. She is a Christian time stewardship coach for busy midlife women in business, and she's here today sharing it all. Hello, Lissa. How are you?
I am so good. It's so fun to hang out with you today, Cherie.
I know. I think you're incredible because I'm looking at the bio, even though we didn't get a lot of time to chat. I'm looking at the bio and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, where has this person been my entire life? Because I didn't even know there was anyone in the world that was basically a specialist in time management and how we utilize our time. So before we dive into that, because you're going to tell us how to add more time to our life, basically, is what I'm saying, in a more solid way, and the way we should be thinking. Tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get to the point of understanding time management and why everyone says they don't have enough time?
Girl, when you just said earlier, where have you been in the world? I was out there trying to figure it out and doing it the wrong way. So it wasn't until God really got my attention around my time and the ROI of my time and how it was affecting me in every area of my life that I finally, I was like, wait, there's got to be a different way to approach this.
Right.
So I'm Lissa Figgins. It's Melissa without the M-E because it's not about me. I live in the Midwest. I've got 3 kids out of the nest. Been married to my hubby for almost 30 years. I love talking around time because this is the great equalizer, right? Every single person listening to this gets 24 hours today, right? None of us has like a leg up where we get like an extra 30 or even 5, even though we would love it.
Good point.
And we think it would change our life. And so really, I think the number one area that we need to look at, especially as business owners, is our time, because how we approach time and how we use time has a direct implication on the ROI, right? The tangible and the intangible, right? Like we are where we are today because of how we've approached time up until now. So for example, like in your health, right? Like you are where you are today in your health because of how you've invested or not invested time in things that related to your health. And the same is true with our relationships and our faith walk and our business and all of these things. Well, I was the poster child for busy, right? I was busy, always busy, like always doing something, couldn't sit still, working from the minute I got up to the minute I went to bed. My husband was in the military, and so he would often deploy on the other side of the world for up to a year at a time. And here I was, this busy mom and busy business owner and busy ministry leader and all these things. And I was always going. And I thought that my value came from all the doing. And I thought that, I just had to keep going because how else in the world are you going to fit all this stuff in? Right. Mm-hmm. And I ignored the guilt, right? We all feel that guilt of like, I'm not being the mom I should be, or the wife I should be, or the business owner I should be, or the friend or the ministry leader and all those things. And just kind of like pushed it off and said, I don't have time to deal with that. I'm doing the best I can, keep pushing forward. Right.
Right.
And then I started ignoring the signs that were coming up in my body. I had this like knot in my stomach all the time. I had this like tension across my shoulders and my neck. And I was always just like, so focused on, what was in front of me and what was coming next. And honestly, I was never really fully present anywhere, because you might be able to relate, right? You're somewhere in body, but your mind is in a bazillion other places of what's coming next or what else you need to do, right? Or what you should be doing. It's like this constant thing. So anyway, I was just ignoring all, the things in my head and the things in my body until I noticed I had a feeling of a ball in my throat for over a year. And again, at first, I ignored it because I was like, who has time to deal with it? And then I thought, okay, maybe I'm not chewing my food well enough. Maybe I'm not drinking enough water. So I tried, being intentional. I'm like, this isn't helping. Again, pushed it off. Don't have time to deal with this until I realized I think it's been over a year. And I started wondering, is there something growing in there? Like, because that's going to obviously, cause a big problem if it is. And so I promised my friends I would go see a doctor. So long story short, tried medication, tried diet changes, tried all kinds of different things. Finally, he put a camera down there and did a scope. And I vividly remember walking into his office for that follow-up appointment. And he sat me down. He said, Lissa, there is no ball in your throat. I put a camera down there. There's nothing there. You have hystericus globus. And he sat there with a smirk on his face. And I was like, what is hystericus globus? And he says, globus, like globe, right? Ball. You have this feeling of a ball in your throat, and hystericus. And he starts scrolling his finger like you're crazy. He's like, this is where they get the word hysterectomy from because they thought women were going crazy in that season of life. He's like, this is all in your head. You have, some level of anxiety around all the stuff you're doing. And I'm happy to give you a prescription that can help. And I'm not against medication at all. But for me, I knew in that moment that that was not going to fix the problem. The real problem was not how full my calendar was. It was that I had this really busy and distracted heart that was running after all of these things all day long, chasing what I call my not enoughness. My time wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't enough. Like, it's this natural progression. And it was like, I couldn't not slow down. And so it was from that diagnosis. I wish I could say it was like an instantaneous change. It wasn't, but it was something that really started shifting inside of me of going, okay, what's the problem here? Because the world's not slowing down anytime soon.
Right.
Neither are the demands and distractions. So I've got to go in my heart and kind of sit with the Lord about this and say, okay, what's going on? And that's really where God started showing me that our busyness is not a disordered calendar. Because if that was the true issue, as soon as we got that calendar in order, everything would be fixed and we wouldn't feel busy anymore.
Right.
It's really a disordered heart. And so that's now what's really shaped like how I've just gone, okay, so what is it? Like, how am I approaching time? And how do we as women approach time? And how do we as women business owners approach time in such a way that we're not running in circles like the rest of the world that doesn't know God? That's it all depending on them, right? To just keep it all under control.
Wow. So how long did it take you to have this knot that you had without medication? How long did it take for it to go away when you realized what the issue was?
Yeah. I wish I could say for sure exactly what that time frame was, but I noticed over time, like, oh my goodness, I'm not noticing that anymore. Right. And then I would notice when I would get stressed about my time, or I would get stressed about all the things that were on my calendar, what I was doing, I would like feel that again. Right. So it was, again, I wish I could say it was like that instant thing. As soon as he told me this, I was like, oh, there it is. And there's the answer. And I walked away. Like, it was a process. Right. But the more I started just like trusting God with my time and knowing that he had given me all the time I needed for what I was called to, which didn't mean I had to say yes to everything that was coming across my plate.
Of course.
Then I was like, oh, I haven't noticed that ball in my throat for a while. Right. And,
it's almost like that ball that you get in your throat with anxiety, and you had that balled up anxiety, but it just didn't go away. Whereas some people will feel that ball in their throat, like they can't swallow, and it'll go away when the anxiety subsides, and yours never did. So
because I was always at that anxious level, right? Like I was always running up here, and, and I was always anxious about my time. Time anxiety is actually a legit diagnosis now, because so many of us are running around saying, I don't have time. There's not enough time. If only I had time. When I have time, time gets away from me. And yeah, it gives us this level of anxiety. And then for many of us, we don't ever come down from that place until something like this happens, right?
And that's why we struggle, is because we're constantly putting things on our plate. So why does time management not work? Because I think a lot of people, and I'm guilty, because I have a team and I tell my team to manage their time accordingly and make sure that they have good time management. And I'm thinking, am I just telling them something that I don't even know how to manage? So why does time management not work?
Yeah. Well, I love that you're asking this question because I think you're right. I think we believe and we're told by all these experts out there that we just need to be better at managing our time, right?
Mm,
And if I can get better at managing my time, then I'm not going to feel busy or anxious about it. And it's always going to be like there's plenty and, and all the things. And
right.
yet, here's the thing. The word manage literally means to get under control and keep contained. Let me
Mm,
just ask, how well is that working for you around your time? First of all, time is not something we can really touch. So, but like just when you think you get everything in order, just when you think you get all your, ducks in a row and everything lined up, what happens? Life happens, right? Whether it was just a hurricane like we talked about, or whether it's something in our
mm,
health or in our business or in a relationship or whatever. And then we literally are playing whack-a-mole all day long, trying to keep things back, in order. And I really think time management is an illusion, because it doesn't ever stay, in that perfect place for more than 30 seconds if we're lucky.
right.
Um, but what happens, think about the manager at a fast food restaurant, right? What are they doing in the background? They're running around trying to keep everybody in place, trying to keep everything lined up, trying to keep everybody happy. They are waiting for that, that bell to ring, right? When they can finally clock out and they're like, oh my goodness, that was so exhausting. And they get up and do it all over again. And I feel like that's so often how we approach our time is I have to manage it. I have to keep it all under control because if I don't, it's going to get away from me and then I'm not going to have enough. And really managing our time,
Mm,
I believe, is a fear-based response to our time. If I don't keep it under control and contained, it's going to get away from me. And I often look, I always go, okay, what does scripture have to say? And so the Lord brought me to Matthew 25, the parable of the talents, which I really think should be called the parable of the servants, because it really was more about their hearts versus how much they'd been given by the master. But in the story, the master gives one guy 1 talent, another one 2 talents, another one 5 talents.
right.
Now, here's the thing. We always think that one guy with the 1 talent, like, oh, we feel bad for him because he had like hardly anything. A talent is 20 years' wages. That was a lot that he had been given. Okay. But look at his response. He was fearful of what was going to happen if that got away. So what did he do? He went and contained it, right? He went and buried it so that it didn't get away. And then when the master came back, he's like, here, and we never like heard the master say what his intent was behind what he gave them, but we can tell by his response. He's like, that's not why I gave it to you. I didn't give it to you just to keep it contained and keep it in a box. But we look at what happened with the other 2, right? It didn't matter that one had 2 and one had 5. They responded by faith and they knew the master's in it to them was for them to invest it to build his kingdom, right? So that's this idea of stewardship. And so I really teach women to shift our perspective on what is my role when it comes to time. First of all, it's not my time, right? It's God's time. He's the one who's, giving it to us each day.
Right.
I like to say it's just like the manna that he laid in front of the children of Israel, right? Like they couldn't make that on their own. They couldn't even save up from yesterday, because it was going to rot. They had to trust him every single day to lay that manna in front of them. We have to trust that God is going to lay 24 hours in front of us each and every day, right? It's not ours. But then we have to ask the question is, why has he given us this time, right? It's to ultimately build his kingdom, right? And we do that in the context of our life and business. And so when we start shifting our role from not just being a manager of it out of fear, I'm trying to keep it under control, right? So it doesn't get away, but as a steward of it, like, wow, this is ultimately, as I build my life and business, I'm ultimately building his kingdom. It's a different perspective shift and takes some of that like heavy burden of trying to manage things all the time off of our shoulders.
So how does a stewardship of time rather than time management, how do we work that? How does that bring us more as a return on our investment versus time management?
Yeah. Well, think about this, right? If you're managing things and trying to keep it under control, right? I'm very hands down, and we literally are like, it's as much as we can do on our own, right? Like I am making things happen and I'm keeping things, this is all on me, and it's very hands down, right? When we start stewarding, like we see, instead of looking at our time as this limited resource that I have to manage, right? And try and eke the most out of it. Now I'm receiving it as this abundant gift. Right. And now, right, there's a whole different thing that happens. And it's almost like it's simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
Think about this. If you are telling yourself, I don't have enough time today, how is that going to affect your day? You're going to feel all day long like you're chasing a clock and that to-do list, and that you're trying to keep up with, and trying to, to get to that point that you think you need to be at by the end of the day. Right. But if I approach it each morning, I'm like, okay, Lord, you've given me this time, right? I'm trusting, number one, that I have time, because we've got 24 hours, and that there's a bigger purpose behind it. And that he tells us that he's the supplier and the multiplier in 2 Corinthians 9. I love that like visual of like, this is not just about what Lissa can do or Cherie can do or Susie or whoever. Like, okay, when I'm partnering with God, like, wow, the way that we use our time and the result of it as believers should look different from the rest of the world. But oftentimes we're running around looking at the fact that, looking like the world, like, believing this lack, I don't have time. And, God's given us this gift. And so then it gives us this deeper sense of intention too, around how we use it.
You are an advocate for planners and planning your time. So how do we do that? So what we're used to doing is we have our to-do list, because there's things that we have to get done. Sure. And, some people, if they don't have a business and they work, they're in leadership, maybe they're in ministry, maybe they own their own business, maybe they're at a 9 to 5, whatever it is, but they also have kids, because for some reason, it seems like men don't ever get stressed out about time. I don't know why that is. Maybe you can enlighten us, but as women, we're always stressed because we are managing our family, but we're also contributing, if not the sole source of financial stability. So we have taken the place of what men used to be years and years and years ago. Because if I think about my grandmother, and my grandfather was the breadwinner and my grandmother was the cook, and she managed the children and all those. But now, in this day and age, we are doing it all. We're managing our children. We are trying to go to school, start businesses, work 9 to 5. We're doing all of these things. We aren't going to the doctor when we need to. Just like you said, it was a year later that you went to go check that out. It's been probably over a year now that my right arm kills me from time to time. I know what it is. I know it's tendonitis. I know it's arthritis. Have I gone to have someone tell me that's what it is? No, I have not, because I don't have time.
Sure. Right. Yeah. There's so many layers
in this. To go with my husband to his appointments because he wants my medical expertise there, but I don't have time to do my own. So help me understand how we take what we're used to and put it into this new stewardship of time.
Yeah. Well, there's several layers to this, and I love this question, and we're just going to scratch the surface, because here's the thing. Here's what I want to say. Most people don't or won't push pause on the busyness to look at their time and to look at the ROI on their time. Because, just like you said, right? We just keep pushing through. We just keep going, because I think, especially as women, and I think this is why it hits us in a different way, is that we have this, innate sense to nurture and to care for our world around us, right? So the people around us, the business we're building, the ministry or the leadership position, all these different things. And when push comes to shove, we will put, those things related to ourselves on the back burner, because we've got, people that we're serving. So part of it is looking at, okay, what are the things that I am called to in this season? And I think that's really important, because just because, a different generation did it, or just because your next door neighbor does it, or just because, someone else does it, does not mean that it is every single, thing that comes across our plate is ours to do. And so I think we do have to be discerning about what's getting my attention and what's not. And here's the thing, like, one of the things that I teach inside of my program and the planner that's coming out are these 8 areas of our life. And I call them the 8 areas of attention. Our faith walk, our family relationships, our friendships, our service, which is going to be our business or the work that we do, the leadership things that we do, our stewardship of resources, our wellness, our passions, and our dwelling. Let's be honest, those areas all matter. And here's the thing, if we are not paying attention to where they are, because we've not been giving them time and attention, one day they are going to demand our attention. And then we're going to be, we are going to be in a hospital, or we are going to be, completely exhausted and on the
Right.
couch or whatever it is, and then not able to do those things. So number one, we have to, realize not everything is ours to do, but number two, we have to make sure that we are taking care of the things that do need our attention such that it doesn't end up demanding our attention. It always costs more time, money, energy, resources, stress, all those things, down the road, right? And
Right.
so how do we, and here's the thing, typically we just keep pushing and going because we don't think we have time to stop and do something about it.
Right.
But what I teach women to do is like, no, we need to take time to pause, to reflect on where we are and pay attention to what needs our time and attention. Otherwise, we're going to be in the ditch. It is going to end up costing us, more down the road. And so when we think we don't have time to do those things, herein we have to say, what's the cost of me putting this off? What's the cost of me not paying attention to this? Down the road, this is now going to become a bigger and bigger problem. And so, so we continue to pay attention. I like to think of it as, so oftentimes I think we're thinking like we're trying to find balance, right? And trying to find balance between work and life, or life and business and things like that. And I think so often we think that balance is a noun, right? Balance is that state of equilibrium when this side equals this side. And really, I think the balance we're after is a verb. And if you watch a ballerina and you look at her from the waist up, it looks like she is like on point and she is like found that perfect spot and went, wow, how did she achieve that perfect place of balance? But look down at her feet. What is she doing? She's making little tiny adjustments as she goes, right? To make sure that her body doesn't go too far in one direction, because then she's going to be, then she's going to be off on the ground.
Right.
So this is where, yes, we have a lot on our plate. Yes, we have a lot of people that are coming at us. But if we are not paying attention, then we are going to be on the ground and we're going to be of no use to anyone. Right. So here's this like permission and direction to push pause, to pay attention to how you're doing, right? Inside and out, because we can want to serve people all day long. But if we end up in a place where we can't, then all those things are, no one's going to get any of us.
Right. And I think if we don't push pause, God sometimes will push it for us.
Isn't that true? Yes.
Yeah. You end up in the hospital and it was like, okay, well, he pushed it for you because you didn't want to push it yourself, and I think also there are subtle ways. I was telling you yesterday that we were without power just out of the blue from 11 a.m. to almost 8 o'clock at night. And for no apparent reason. The weather was beautiful, of course, in South Florida after Hurricane Milton. I think they are having challenges with, power and power surges and all these things. And so for some reason, our power was out for 9 hours and I wasn't mad about it. Because my plan, my morning routine is different. Everybody knows my morning routine starts with Jesus, coffee and Christ. And that's where I spend my time. So on Sunday mornings, we go to church. I wasn't feeling well yesterday. So I said, okay, I'm going to stay home and I'm going to watch church online. Do you know, as soon as church was over online, my power went out.
Wow.
Right after church, the power went out. And my plan was to sit on the sofa and play catch up with time that I didn't have during the week to do all of these things that I needed to do. And instead, I had no power to Wi-Fi either. So I was forced just to rest.
Yeah.
And I'm
Which
not
is sometimes the best way to spend your time, right? Than trying to push through and get a whole bunch more stuff done.
But normally I would have been so just withered with anxiety because I'm constantly go, 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 doing what I have to do. My to-do list are 2 pages long and I'm thrilled when I can mark something off. And this is just how I handle it. Normally I would have been really stressed out that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. But I wasn't. I was actually just relaxed. And when you said push pause, I immediately thought, well, God literally pushed pause for me yesterday.
And that's where, the practice of Sabbath, like we can intentionally choose to do that, whether it's for an entire day or a couple of hours, and even when I teach a way of looking at our time, I teach that we need to have times that we're refilling. And then there are the times we're pouring out. And I think
Absolutely.
so often we get up and it's like from the minute the alarm goes off, boom, boom, boom. We've got, texts to answer and messages to respond to and laundry to change. And, if
Right.
we don't take time, I mean, think of even just about your phone. If you didn't have your phone plugged in at some point in the day, it is going to run out of battery and then it's not
Yes.
going to do anything. Right. And so when women say, I don't have time for myself, I'm like, you don't have time not to pay attention and to fill up body, mind, spirit. So I'm like you, my morning time, the most important work I do all day long is what I call my CEO daily meeting with God. I've
Yeah.
redefined CEO as a Christ empowered operator of the life and business God's given me.
I love
And
that.
yeah. And so as the CEO, I mean, think about the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, right? They're not just off running in a bunch of million directions. They sit down with the chairman of the board. They're really clear on what the vision, what the mission, what the purpose is, and where they're going to invest time and resources and energy and things like that to grow, right? According to that. And so I think this is the most important time. And when I teach this way of laying out, I teach a way to lay out your ideal week. And so I teach about, yes, we need those morning refills. I think we also need evening refills because
Mm,
how many of us, truth be told, we are on a screen up until the minute we go to bed?
yes.
Whether it's being productive, quote unquote, and we're trying to get stuff done, or we're just vegging out and watching something thinking that's refilling us. First of all, it's not refilling. And second
Right.
of all, how many of us then lay in bed and we can't get our brain to turn off? And then we're wondering why we're tired the next day or why we're waking up at 4 a.m. with whatever on our mind.
Yes.
I think we need to bookend our day with I'm not producing something. I'm not trying to do something or even maybe even consume something unless it's really refilling body, mind, and spirit. And so it's really important. I would love to share this with your audience because this shift makes a big difference.
Yes. Yes.
This is knowing what it's time for. When it is time to fill up, it is not time to be answering emails. It's not time to be doing laundry. It's not time to be cleaning. It's not time to be recording the podcast, right? And here's where I don't have to feel guilty because I know when I know what it's time for, then I'm giving that my focus. So here's what I find so many of us do. We run around all day asking the wrong question about our time. You know what it is? We ask the question, what time is it? Like all day long, we look at our watch, we look at our phone, we look at the clock on the wall or on our computer, and we're like, what time is it? And what's the response that comes up when we ask the question, what time is it? And we look and notice, we're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, right? The anxiety starts coming, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, I'm behind. Time got away from me. That took longer than I thought it. I had no idea. Like usually it's not like, oh, wow, I got tons of time. This is great.
Yeah.
It just kind of leads us to that, I have to keep doing and catch up with this time that's getting away from me. So here's a very simple shift that well, there are two things that I say are going to make the biggest difference. And again, they feel so little. One of them is believing you have time. Because when we run around saying we don't, it's first of all, not the truth. And it's going to focus on the lack. The second thing is asking this question instead. What is it time for? You hear the difference between those two questions. What
Yeah.
time is it? And what is it time for? Even just that question makes makes my shoulders kind of, go down.
Right.
It makes you be present to your time, right? Again, here's where I said most people don't and won't stop and think about what it's time for. We're just reacting all day long. We've got this thing that follows us around like an extra appendage that
Right.
rings, stings, and pings, even if we have notifications turned off, right? And so we're like, time goes to this. I'll share something about that in just a minute. But let me finish this. What is
Mhm.
it time for? Presupposes two things. Number one, I have time in front of me. Number two, there's a purpose for the time in front of me. Now, how can I show up present to what that purpose is?
Mm.
And therein is the difference between, I think so many of us have been chasing productivity, especially, if we're doers and we're action takers and we're business owners and we're leaders and we're all right. Like I'm about being productive. My husband used to come home and we'd go on these walks and he'd be like, so what'd you get done today? I finally had to teach him, coach him, don't ask me that question because that's focusing on that productivity side of things.
Right.
And I've coined a phrase called purposivity, right? Am I looking at the purpose in my time and focusing on that more than just the productivity? Because how many of us have just been checking boxes to check boxes, right? And so this idea of what is it time for really helps starting to shift our wrong view that we don't have time. And then also that, the goal is just to get more stuff done or multitask in this block of time in front of me so I can, try and check off more boxes. Multitasking is not our superpower. It's our kryptonite. It
Yeah.
weakens our focus. It spreads us so thin that no one and nothing gets enough of us that we don't really do much of anything. And they actually show that multitasking makes the tasks take up to 50% longer and 40% more mistakes. So
Wow.
here we think like, this is the way I'm going to maximize the minutes here, and I'm going to do all these things at once. But if we were to actually just stop and say, what is it time for? Give it that full focus. We would really start, number one, we wouldn't be anxious about all the other things out here because it's not time for those right now, right? This is what it's time for, and this is getting my focus. And I'm able to actually see the fruit of investing my time in that way.
Oh, wow. Because I am a multitasking queen. And I'm working one computer for one task. I'm working another computer. It's ridiculous. And I even was thinking, I had bought these two big monitors and I gave them to my son. And I thought, well, maybe he doesn't use one of those monitors. Maybe I could put a monitor up. So now I'm sitting here contemplating two computers and a monitor. I'm like, that is the last thing I need after talking to you this morning.
Well, and even if someone's listening and has one monitor, I'm going to ask you right now, how many tabs do you have open?
Oh, yeah.
How many tabs are open on your computer? I have been on calls with people and they have so many tabs open that they have to click on a bazillion different tabs to find the one they wanted. Talk about wasting time. But here's the thing, our brain, even if you're not looking at what's behind every single tab, your brain knows that tab is there and there's something undone and you have to go back to it.
Yeah.
And that right there is distracting your focus. Right. And so, yeah, when I work with CEOs, when I work with Christ empowered operators, women who are building businesses, I teach them how to have one tab open in front of them. Like, and here's the thing, like the system that I teach is like, how do we keep all those other links that I'm going to need to get to somewhere so that I can find them easily, but it's not taking up the bandwidth so I can give my focus to what it is in front of me, because it does weaken our focus, right? Even they say your phone being in the same room as you, even if you're not looking at it, is distracting because you're thinking about the fact that there's something coming in on this that is going to need my time and attention.
And social media scrolling has been the worst stealer of our time as well as our joy. Because I think there's so many people, I've met with so many different women, and in my coaching, one of the biggest things that we talk about, and it seems like it comes up over and over, or that women are constantly comparing themselves online to somebody that's already doing what they want to do, but they're so much further along. And so
or looks like they are, right? Because let's be honest, like we're seeing the highlight reel, right?
We're seeing the highlight reel. Well, yeah, we haven't seen the fight with the ex-husband and the children talking back to him. We don't get to see that on the highlight reel. But it seems like it is one of the biggest joy stealers and time stealers is social media scrolling.
Comparison
that I can honestly say that I stopped doing a long time ago. If I'm on social media, it is purpose driven. I am intentionally on there to either make a post to fill up someone or a post to announce something that's happening, whether it's one of my devotionals, a coaching program, a podcast. It's all intentional, but I do not scroll. So it's almost like I don't really know what all's going on unless it just happens to pop up when I'm on there. I don't know what's going on with everyone else because I'm way too focused on what I'm doing, because if I focus on what you're doing, then I get lost in that, unless I'm being educated, right? I'm an educational nerd. I love to learn from others. But if I get caught in scrolling, then I start looking at what everyone else is doing. And then I add that to my to-do list.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
I want to do what you're doing. Why did I just add that to my to-do list?
Yeah. And even if you don't physically write it down, like you said, it's up here in your mind and you're thinking about that. Here's what's really interesting. I love that you brought up, and it's not just a social media thing, just in general, the average person touches their phone 2,617 times a day.
Wow.
That's a lot, right? That adds up to an average of 4 hours and 37 minutes a day, which now for like you and I, right? I'm intentional when I'm going on here, but still there's probably some unintentional time that's on there. But my math brain got really curious about what does that look like in a year? So I did the math. I did 4 hours and 37 minutes times 365 days. Remember, some people are double that. Okay. That adds up to 70 days a year of time that is going to a device. 70 days. And we will walk around saying, I don't have time. So if you ever are telling yourself, I don't have time today, I want you to pause, go check your screen time and look at that number and say, oh, look at, I did have time. I just chose to spend it in a different way, right? Or I chose to give it, that this is just one tangible way to measure how much time we have.
Yeah.
Because we do, but we're not always paying attention to, what was the ROI of Candy Crush 2.0, right? Or what was the ROI of scrolling for that 30 minutes? Or
now that I've never understood. I've
Right.
never understood that. I get it. Some people like, I'll be on an airplane and I see people playing those games and I'm like, is that a relaxation technique? Because I'm looking at you thinking, what an unbelievable waste of time.
Right. I think it's a distraction technique. And here's the thing.
Maybe
The enemy's tactic is to keep us busy and distracted. Right. Like if he can keep us busy and distracted, we feel like we're being productive, but guess what? We are no threat to him and we're not really building the kingdom. We're just on our own hamster wheel, just busy and distracted, just doing things, and so the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? Jesus is like, I came to give you life and life to the full, which is not a life that's too full. But I think that, right now, our most precious resource is our time and our attention that's attached to that. And so here's where, like, number one, when we start believing I do have time, when we start shifting, my role is not to manage it out of fear, but to steward it out of faith. And when I start looking at the purpose behind my time, there's still a calendar, right? Yes, there's still, things that we need to get done, but it's amazing how like this shift makes a difference now in how I approach it. Because now I'm not just randomly giving time to all these lesser things and things that aren't in alignment, because I know that my time has value and God's given it to me for a reason. And so that's why I love having this conversation around it, because it touches every person on the planet every single day. How are you approaching your time? And are you stopping to look at where you are? Are you stopping to look at and evaluate, not judge? My business isn't quite where I want it to be. Where have I been investing my time? My wellness isn't right where I want it to be. My marriage, my parenting, my ministry, my fill in the blank, right? Like, better to push pause in that moment and ask some questions and get with the Lord about it than to keep spinning your wheels and going in whatever direction. And then, one day end up like way in left field when you wanted to go the other direction.
Until God presses pause for you. Well, exactly. I know a lot of people right now are sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, I know exactly where my time's going, or I'm going to sit down and I'm going to really think about where my time, or they may be thinking, I'm going to go look at my screen time that she mentioned and see how much time I'm spending on the phone. You've definitely educated me and filled me up. So I know that there are hundreds of thousands of people that are listening that you're filling them up. So we could keep talking, but I know people are probably going, I have to get out and go to work. Tell us how we can work with you, because I know that you coach on this aspect where you can work with people and help them individually, because all of our time is different, right? We can't just say, oh, we're all women and we all have children. Not all of us do. Some of us are empty nesters like you and I, Lissa. So how can we work with you? Where can we find you?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me today. First of all, go follow the Redeem Her Time podcast. If you already love listening to Cherie's show, then you love learning probably while you're mopping the floors or driving somewhere or getting ready in the morning. So go follow the Redeem Her Time podcast. That's a great place to go. I do offer coaching specifically for women that are in business, because we are not in business to have a busyness. We are in business to have a business, right? One that has an ROI, that we're increasing our impact and our income in less time for God's glory. And so I do offer coaching resources around that, but I also have a planner that's coming out. And this is a tangible tool because, again, like we said earlier, time is something we can't really get our hands on. And so I think when we just keep it all in our head or we're just scrolling through the calendar on our phone, it doesn't help us to really see our time in an intentional way. And so I've put together all these resources to help steward time in the Redeem Her Time Planner. And this is where you're writing in your own handwriting about your time. Girl, it connects your hand to your head, to your heart, right? And it's not just I'm reacting all day long, like there's intention. And I really help you kind of get this bigger with God vision for your life and business. And then we start going down into, and what does it look like in this season and this month and this week and this day, right? And now you've got this way of approaching time by asking, what is it time for? so that when you go into a week or you go into a month, it's not reaction mode all day long. You know what it is. So what I did is I put together a little bonus for your audience to give you guys a taste of the planner. And it's one of the tools I use in the beginning. It's called the balance assessment. And the reason this is so important, because we talked about this a couple times today, most people just jump right into today. We jump right into the calendar. We jump right into the week. If you were going to get in the car, say I live in the Midwest, say I want to come down and visit you in Florida, right? Like I can know your address, but guess what? When I get in the car, the most important piece of information that my GPS needs to get from where I am to where you are, right? Where I want to be is what? My location.
Yeah,
my
location.
Where am I right now? Otherwise, I can be looking at a Google map that shows this is Cherie's house, and I can want to be there all day long. But until I put in where I am, it can't route me there. So the balance assessment helps you assess where are you in those 8 areas we talked about, right? Permission and direction to push pause in the busyness. Take 5-10 minutes, take this assessment and say, what is it that needs my time and attention such that I'm not off in the ditch at some point because now it's, the wheels fell off the bus. So you can find that at redeemhertime.com /assessment, or just go to redeemhertime.com and there's a link to it on there as well.
We'll have that in the notes as well.
Yeah. Pausing to think about your time and the ROI, where I am right now, is going to save you time, than just trying to keep, go in the same direction you are and wonder why you're not getting where you want to be or where God's leading you to be, right? That's really what it's about. It's not just where do I want to be? What has God called me to? And how is this building something that's going to last longer than me?
Perfect. Wow. This was good. I'm completely, I'm filled up. And, and here's the thing, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So sometimes you have to just talk with someone that you can reset. And it's interesting because this is one of the things that's been challenging me is time. So I know that you filled me up and you had me look at things in a different perspective. So I know you've done that for a lot of people. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Lissa. I really, really do. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. If I can just say one thing as we're closing, if you didn't hear anything else, it's the truth that you have time and God's given you a purpose behind that time. So start asking that question. What is it time for? And see how that starts shifting things for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cherie.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Cherie Rickard Show. I hope you feel inspired and empowered to take action in your life today. Before we wrap up, I'm excited to share that 2025 is going to be an incredible year for transformation. I am offering an exclusive Queen Bee coaching opportunity designed to help you rebuild, transform, and prosper in every area of your life. Plus, we're gearing up for the Queen Bee Transformation Conference and Retreat. This is going to be a life-changing event where we will dive deep into faith, healing, and the power of creating the life that you deserve. This is your time to reclaim your story, and I'll be right here with you. Be sure to subscribe to the show, share it with someone who needs a little encouragement today. Follow me on social media at The Cherie Rickard Show for updates on everything we have coming your way. Until next time, keep shining and keep believing because you are chosen and you are